So next let's take international trade. So when we are talking about international trade, you need to understand that barter system was the first important thing which started. This NCERT books tries to give you historically till now what all has happened. Till now also it is till 2011-12 maximum, not beyond that. So you have to be careful. So you're all aware about the barter system where for one good the other good is usually exchanged. And then we need to talk about the history of international trade. Ancient times India was one of the most important country. China was important for silk, whereas the other countries, Europe and others, after industrialization started developing, right? So slave trade was also very much common, and you know that after the fights in United States and other parts of the country, we usually observe that these were completely removed. Why does international trade exist? One of the simple reason for that is no country is having all the resources, so it has to rely on some other countries. Second important thing, even if it has all the resources, it has to actually sell some of its products to maintain its economy over a period of time, else Great Depression like United States of America can actually happen. So that is also important for us. Next important thing we need to observe is with respect to basis of international trade. Geological structure matters a lot. It determines the mineral resource base and topographical differences, which ensures diversity of crops and animals raised, because geography determines whether it is mineral, soil, agriculture or anything. So some crops were grown in some areas and some were not grown. Spices in India, silk in China, all this was very important. Second important thing, mineral resources played a very important role. For example, India had iron and steel. When it comes to China, they had iron ore. Japan didn't had iron ore, so they had to do trade with China. And there were several other circumstances which actually led to this. Climate also determines what type of crop can be grown in different parts of the world, and this also led to colonization. Whenever similar climatic conditions were seen, different crops were introduced in different parts of the world. You know that sugar cane actually played a very important role. Second important thing, population factors, diversity, culture played a very important role. Some cultures allowed for trade to be taking place in different parts of the world. For example, art and craft of India, China, jute, all this was very important. Size of population, with increasing density of the population, usually there will be trade within the country. In India, internal trade will be more than compared to external trade. Why? The main reason of this is the density. Whenever the numbers are small, usually they try to do trade with other communities. So this is what you try to understand. With industrial revolution, when you wanted more market, then industries were actually present at one part and the goods were distributed to different parts of the world. Stages of economic development, different countries are in different stages of economic development. For example, India actually exports raw material of iron ore even today and imports steel. So some countries usually go for oil export to India, and India exports petroleum products back to them. So this is what we try to say, the different levels of economic development actually leads to trade over those particular products. Then extent of foreign investment. Investment plays a very important role. If investment increases in India, more industries will come up in India and trade will be mostly within the country. And if investment is not there, then usually they look for those countries where investments are available. Then transport is the most important thing that we all have to understand. That is, if you have better road connectivity, rail connectivity and all, usually industries are willing to go. And from that part we can have trade facilities or trade with other countries. Let us take Northeast India. Northeast India receives lot of goods from Myanmar and Bangladesh, and goods going from Northeast India will be less, for a simple reason that transportation facilities are not so proper within. If you can usually exploit all the natural resources within the Northeast India, and if you can export them, then Northeast India is not dependent on the neighboring countries at all. So transport plays a very important role in the destination as well. And then when we talk about the trade, we also have to look at the volume of trade. Volume of trade usually varies. Exports and imports are usually considered, and when exports are more and imports are less, we usually try to say that balance of trade is in favorable. If exports are less and imports are more, we say that we are in the negative balance of trade. And then we talk about the composition of the trade, which is also very important. Here we need to talk about the goods and services. When I say goods and services, it's not only goods which will go, but services are also important. I talked about the outsourcing, right? All this is very important when we are talking about the trade. Now, whenever we talk about the direction of trade, agricultural products and raw materials move from developing and least developed countries to developed countries, whereas whenever we talk about the finished products, they actually come from developed countries to developing countries or least developed countries. This will be the direction of trade throughout the world. Balance of trade I have just explained you. And then there are two types of international trade. One is bilateral between two countries, and we are also seeing free trade agreement with those countries specifically. And the other important thing we are talking is actually with respect to most favored nation status being given through WTO, and this will ensure that everyone will have equal trading rights with other countries. No country can discriminate one country which is a member of WTO with the other country which is a member of WTO. This is very crucial for us. So regional organizations, SAARC, European Union, all this are multilateral trade. Then you need to talk about the case for free trade. Globalization's main aim is to ensure or achieve free trade throughout the world. Then whenever globalization takes place, one of the major problem is dumping. What is the meaning of it? Let me take in China, the product is sold at 10 rupees. Okay. Now, when the same product has to be sold to India, in India let me take the product cost is 9 rupees. So Chinese products is 10 rupees, Indian goods are 9 rupees. Which one will you purchase? You will obviously purchase Indian goods over Chinese goods. China, understanding this, what it will do? It will give a subsidy of 2 rupees for their product. So their product will become 8 rupees, and once it enters into Indian market, 8 rupees is cheaper than 9 rupees. So usually people will purchase this particular product. Over a period of time, people get used to this particular product and they will not purchase the 9 rupees at all. The 9 rupee industry will shut down and people will purchase 8 rupees alone. Over a period of time, from 8 rupees directly they will make 12 rupees and even try to take the money which they had given through subsidy in the beginning. At that time there are no domestic industries present and only we have to rely on the global industries. So this is the long term plan which many states say that why we are against global trade is because dumping usually takes place. Second important thing you need to understand is with respect to World Trade Organization, and the main ambition of World Trade Organization is to ensure that there is free trade in the world, and all these things are usually being reduced, right? One is WTO, no need to see here much, you can just go through it carefully once at home, especially when you are talking with respect to international relations or so. Then you have to look at the regional trade blocks. Whenever we are talking about the regional trade blocks, we are talking about European Union, SAARC and others. So whichever is not possible at the global level has to be done here. ASEAN countries, initially there were only 6 countries. Today you have 10 countries and the areas of cooperation is usually associated with products. Commonwealth of Independent States, erstwhile USSR comes into picture. You have European Union, you have Latin American Integration Association, North American Free Trade Association, OPEC, oil producing countries, SAFTA among SAARC countries, right? Some of the major concerns with respect to this is trade, pollution, human rights violation, security issues, all this comes into picture. And then gateways of international trade, whenever you are reading, ports is very important, And the ports can be divided into industrial ports, where mostly it is associated with industries. For example, when you talk about Paradweep and all, Vishakhapatnam port, mostly iron ore is imported and steel is exported. Commercial ports, cargo, most of the things, general products are also being present in this particular region. Comprehensive ports will handle both bulk and general cargo in large volumes. And then you have inland ports accessible through sea. We have Haldia port and Kolkata port, Hooghly on river Ganga, outports which are actually outside the mainland. Greece is one good example of this. So, if you have a territory and if you have port here, these are normal ports. If it is outside, outports. If it is inside, inner ports, right. So, this is very, very important. Oil ports mostly use it to export oil or import oil, right. Maracaibo in Venezuela, Tunisia, Tripoli in Lebanon are some of the best ports. Next important thing you have to understand is port of call, very, very important. For example, a naval ship is actually going in the sea. Sometimes it needs some grains or some food, oil, something is required. So, at that time they should have some place where they can go and they can fill everything. It is like shops in between, that is called as port of call. Certain countries develop the ports in such a way that whoever comes, they usually get access to this and they go there and take everything and then they move to the next destination. It is like once you are moving from one place to another place, you stop at some place, that is called as ports of call. Then you have something called as packet station. These are also called as ferry ports. These packet stations are exclusively concerned with the transportation of passengers and mail across water bodies covering short distances. These stations occur in pairs, that is, you have England on one side, France on the other side. In between these two, people and mails are usually changed. Entry port ports. Let me take Dubai, okay, or Singapore, okay. So, now let me take all the products from US will come to Dubai, from India it comes to Dubai, and here rather than India going till United States or US coming till India, India will dump all its products in Dubai, US will dump all its products here. There is a US ship here, there is Indian ship here, correct. Now, what happens? Indian ship will carry US products, US ship will carry Indian products. This exchange takes place here. This is called as entry port. You talk about Singapore, from India it goes to Singapore, from China it comes to Singapore, right. In Singapore it is exchanged. See guys, rather than India going till Canada and Canada coming till here, we need to have a particular place where the exchange of goods can easily happen. This is what we call as entry port ports. At last you have naval ports. What is the meaning of this? Used mainly for the defense purposes, right. Very, very important. This chapter example, especially the last one, oil ports, ports of call, packet stations, all this is very, very important. Whenever they talk about the Sagarmala project, where you need to develop ports, rather than keeping our ports simply, if you can give access to other ports which can come and try to make use of the benefits present here, as India is also in the middle of Suez Canal and Strait of Malacca, then India can also earn lot of money and it will also help the port development as well, right. This is very, very important for us. Then let us take the last chapter of this book, that is with respect to human settlements. So, first let us start with the rural urban dichotomy, that is, what is rural area and what is urban area. Rural area is the one where majority of its people are dependent on agriculture. Urban area is the one where majority of the people are not dependent on agriculture. This is the most important thing that we all have to remember. Second important thing is suburbanization. It is a new trend coming up. If you have a city, outskirts people try to locate. This is called as suburbanization. It is a new trend of people moving away from the congested urban areas to cleaner areas outside the city in search of better quality or living. Important suburbs develop around major cities. Can you understand? Commutation usually takes place in this particular region. So, different countries have different types of urbanization, and when we talk about settlements, you need to understand settlements can be divided into compact or nucleated, where all the people are present very close to each other. You have dispersed, where the settlements are far off, right? So, it is very, very important for us to understand compact settlements. Can you see? Everything is closer. And when I talk about dispersed, can you see one here and one here? So, this is called as dispersed settlements. And then rural settlements means villages where primary activities is usually considered, and here based on the water supply and other things, right, usually people are present. For example, if there is a lake, usually people are present near rivers, lakes, springs and others. We call this as wet point settlements. And sometimes if fertile land is available, that is very, very important for the people to settle, and land is also important. Upland is important for protection and also for grazing. If building material is available, on the basis of that, settlement can take place. So, for example, in Northeast India, if you see, the tribal communities usually are present on the hills, but they do all other activities on the plains. So, that is also important for us, right? And then when we talk about the other most important thing, defense also plays a very important role. Whenever two tribal communities wants to protect against one another, usually they try to choose places where their protection is there. That is on hilly areas, Khasis, Garo, Jaintia, they are present on hilly areas and they never come down, and they have protected in such a way that if anyone from bottom, if they try to reach there, then definitely they will prevent them. Is it fine? So, defense is also important. Next, you have planned settlements, that is Chandigarh and other places, where you try to say, okay, you develop roads first and then you say, okay, you have community has to come up here, community has to come up here. So, government's involvement usually is important. And then we actually have patrons of rural settlements. First important thing is on the basis of setting. For example, if you have plains, you call it plain villages. If it is there on a plateau, lava plateau, we call it plateau villages. If it is there on the coastal side, we call coastal villages. If it is there on forest, we call it forest villages. If it is there in deserts, desert villages. Very simple. Functions: fishermen villages, pastoral villages, farming villages, nothing much. On the basis of shapes, you have different one. For example, let me take linear pattern. A river is flowing. Houses will come up here. Can you see linear? If you have railway track, houses comes up. Can you see linear? This is linear. Next, you have rectangular. So, wherever roads cut, right, in between if people stay, we call it rectangular. Circular, around lake, if the people come up, we call them to be circular. Star-like, if you have roads in multiple directions and if houses comes up, we call it star-like. Can you see T-junction, wherever it meets and houses comes up, we call it T-junction. And then can you see something called as Y-junction, wherever it meets in Y form, we call it as Y-junction. Double village, these settlements extend on both sides of a river, right? You have a river in between flowing, you have one settlement here, another settlement here. This is called as double village. UPSC questions, where do you usually find linear, star shaped, right? And they may ask you T junction, Y junction, all this is very, very important for you. Problems of rural settlements: health facilities will not be there, sanitation will not be there, all this needs to be taken care of. Urban facilities, job opportunities, good educational facilities, only agriculture, nothing else will be usually present in this particular area, correct? And then we come to urban settlements. Different countries call urban areas to be different. In India, it our census wise we say if the population is more than 5,000 in a place, we call it to be census town, right. Different places usually give different on the basis of the density. Along with this, India say you should have a density of 400 persons per square kilometer. That is, you should have more than 5,000 persons in a village or in a place, and the density should be more than 400. Then only I will classify it as a town or urban area. This is what we say with respect to India. Occupational structure, we say that 75%, more than 75% of the people should be there in other activities, not just in the agriculture. Then administration. So, if we actually consider administration, capital cities comes into picture. Location matters. Sometimes seaports develop into cities because of its relevance. Madras, Kolkata, all this were developed. And then functions of urban centers. What are the functions? The functional relationship also exists. That is, few cities are called as administrative cities, few cities are called as industrial cities. Jamshedpur is known as industrial city. So, these points become important. London is a port city, right. So, this is very, very important for us. Trading and commercial towns. Some places will be used only for trade, Dubai, Singapore and all. Cultural towns on the basis of temples, Varanasi and all you usually see. Classification of towns on the basis of forms, historical, cultural, all this comes into picture. Addis Ababa, the new flower, the name of the Ethiopian capital. Addis Ababa, as the name indicates, is the new city, right. It is very, very important for us to look at some of the names. Canberra is another one which you have to see. The next most important thing is types of urban on the basis of size. First important thing is town. The concept of town can be best understood with reference to a village, right. So, if the population size is more than 5,000 and density is more than 400, we call it a town. But when we have to call something to be a city, it must be regarded as a leading town which has outstripped its local or regional rivals. For example, if you have 4 places, everything of same size, but industries are developing more here and more number of people are moving towards it, this is called as city. Cities are much larger than towns and have a greater number of economic functions. Functional towns, single functional towns can be there. Colleges alone can become a town in some places, right. So, you usually see cities, multiple functions usually takes place. Then you come to what is called as conurbation, that is, was coined by Patrick Geddes and applied to a large area of urban development that resulted from the merging of originally separate towns. Hyderabad and Secunderabad is best example for this. Megalopolis, the Greek word meaning great city, means super metropolitan region. What is the meaning of this? Extending as unions of conurbations. That is, see, 2 towns joined together to form one conurbation, 2 conurbations joined to form one megalopolis. This is very, very important. And then what is important for you is million city. If a population is more than a million, we call it million city. India also has significant number of million cities in the world, right. It is very, very important. A mega city or megalopolis is a general term for cities together with their suburbs with a population more than 10 million people. Megalopolis or mega cities means more than 10 million people. Problems in human settlements in developing countries. Population density is more, health is a biggest problem, no education, slums develop, squatter settlements usually increase. Before that, you should see which is this country or place where you see highest population, it is Tokyo. Then you have Canton, China, Delhi is also important. Problems in urban areas, you have to talk about the slums or squatter settlements which usually comes up, correct. You have slums and squatter settlements. Second important thing is economic problems. because migrants usually come, they don't have money, so they have to stay wherever the opportunity is available for them to stay, and they develop some sort of slums around. Then you have socio-cultural problems. That is, when migration takes place, different societies will be usually looking at different sorts of cultural activities, and this leads to some divisions within the societies. Crimes can also be observed. Environmental problems, urban floods have become one of the most important problem because of excess heat. Second important thing, sewage, traffic, pollution. Crackers is banned in Delhi because of excessive pollution that is taking place. You lose your cultural identity because of the environmental problems as well. See guys, with respect to human geography, right from the beginning I am telling you only simple things. You need not by heart the things. If you can read the geography NCERT books, wherever I have told you prelims, try to mark it as prelims, and remember, wherever we have told you it is important from mains, try to read it. If you read that, it is more than enough. Human geography of the world is important from mains point of view, but for prelims some facts is important. But as I have told you, if you can read in an order, it will be beneficial. After 8th standard resources, if you can read 12th standard this particular NCERT book, then both are same. Now what we'll do, we will take 10th standard NCERT book, which talks about human geography in India, where resources are studied, and then we will take 12th standard NCERT book again, which is another book which talks about Indian economy and geography. So if we can read these two together, we will be reducing our time, right? So first we need to know, I have just started with these concepts, basic concepts in the world. Now we have to read specifically with India, where you have to know where are different minerals present in India, where different industries are coming up in India. So the same thing whichever we saw for the world, we have to see in India. So Indian geography, you have to give Indian examples. World geography, you give examples of the world. But for UPSC exam, if you can Indian geography examples even for world geography questions, it makes more sense, because GS do not differentiate into world geography and Indian geography until and unless they specifically talk about what is the impact in the world. When they ask in the world, how is migration affecting the world, you have to give world, else it's usually associated with India. Right guys, so we completed 12th human geography, but let's take Indian geography 10th and 12th together and try to finish that. Is that fine? Thank you guys, thanks for watching.